Hello there. I just wanted to do a follow-up to the video from yesterday that I titled Anonymous Assassins. I received from a friend and another correspondent some other information today, some following up information, which I'd like to read what they've sent me. I'm not going to mention any names, of course, because I think people want to be anonymous, and I understand that because of, I think the videos I'm doing here, well, a certain amount of care has to be taken because of, as I said before, reasons. First of all, the Honourable Doctor, the one that sent in December 2015, sent the email to Tony Chambers saying the children are going to die, nobody's listening to us, it's an unsafe unit. Well, yeah, she's living her best life and has been since that time and henceforward. And she's certainly friends with Breary and Jayaram on Facebook. She's friends with them, she's tight with them. Anyway, I'll leave that bit there. As Jabe's Allowed account very helpfully said in the comments on the last video, Anonymous Assassins video, Dr. ZA was Dr. C, because they all have to change their letters for Thirlwall. Why would that be? Why would they need to do that? Why would they need to do that, really? You have to wonder, don't you? Is it just to confuse us, just to make it interesting? Anyway, Jabes has said, and it's obviously the case, yeah, Dr. ZA at Thirlwall is Dr. C in the trial. And James made some other comments, which is also reflected in the correspondence that I've had from another friend by email today that links them up. So it's obvious it's the case that Dr. C is Dr. C in the trial is Dr. ZA at Thirlwall. So, but just looking at Dr. ZA at Thirlwall now, this is some testimony that my friend sent me in an email today, and I'm just reading from the Word document that she very kindly prepared. This is a different correspondent, but it's all the same theme, and it's all just additions to it and more detail, which I understand other people might be aware of, but I hadn't tied up the possibilities of this link that was talking about in the last video, which was a real sort of disappointment because I believed there was at least one real one there, a real sort of somebody with integrity, but apparently not. Out of the consultants, I mean. From the Thirlwall transcript, in respect of ZA now, Dr. ZA, who was Dr. C at the trial, this is her speaking. We were very busy. There weren't enough consultants for workloads that we were doing. We also didn't have enough junior doctors. And that meant that it was relatively common that the consultants would have to act down to cover vacant junior doctors' shifts, which was important to ensure the acute safety at that particular time. But that did mean that there was less time for the non-urgent clinical tasks because everything was done to sort of prioritise that acute safety. But it did mean, this is awful, this bit. This is awful. So this is Dr. ZA speaking, who's Dr. C at the trial. And just remember, in the background, we've got this Honourable Doctor, quoting quotes, who sent that email in December 2015 to Chambers. Dr. ZA now goes on to say, but it did mean partly that Lucy Letby could hide what she was doing within people being generally busy. Because I can't be as explicit as I'd like to be. Isn't that just the worst? Isn't that one of the most awful things that Dr. ZA is saying here in light of other realizations? Isn't that just the worst? This person living her best life on Facebook, Sorry, I shouldn't say that. No, I don't know who Dr. ZA is. I just know they're Dr. C in the trial, that's all. They're just Dr. C in the trial, that's all. But wouldn't it be awful if Dr. ZA, just hypothetically now, wouldn't it be awful if Dr. ZA at the time had been saying something completely different? And what's noticeable, it's getting very hard to talk about this without... Anyway, what we are noticing with Dr. ZA here is that at Thirlwall, nobody's pressing her, and they must know. They must know. I know we're not meant to know, but they know, and the court knows about, I don't know, somebody else, or was it sending an email in which very specific things are said about children going to die. But that doesn't come up here in a specific way, does it? That's not quoted, not asked about, not interrogated about, not unpacked at the trial or here at Thirlwall. No, it's kind of it's generalised. It's a wash is over it. It's just about busyness. It's just about busyness. In Dr. Zede's testimony here, not drilling in, and back to the question, Nicholas de la Peur, the KC, saying, "Oh, did you send that email about short staff?" "Oh yeah, I sent that, the short staff one." That's all it was. It's just short staff. Just about the short staff. It wasn't anything else. I didn't say anything else. Yeah, I thought it was incredibly busy and we were pushed, and there was, yeah, and even here we're filling in for junior doctor's shifts. But don't ask me actually what I did put. Don't actually ask me exactly what I did put. Thirlwall. Avoid that, swerve that as much as you possibly can. Don't ask me in the trial exactly what I did put and interrogate that defence. Don't ask me about that, because now I've reframed it. Or anyway, if a person like ZA had said something different, if a person like ZA, i.e. Dr. C, had said something much more intense than it was just about short staff and filling in junior doctors' shifts, if they had done, well, isn't it a shocker that they would then turn round and actually say, well, yeah, I know I said all that, but actually that was just the cut. I know I said all that about, hypothetically, about the premonition of all the deaths that were going to happen and people breaking down and the unsafeness. If I had said that, I'm not saying Dr. ZA did that, not saying that she did it. I mean, somebody knows the definitive truth about that in terms of Thirlwall and the trial and the prosecution and the defence. They all know that. They've all seen that email. And they know its contents. But neither at the trial nor at Thirlwall is that drilled into and said, well, what does this mean then? It's not about just being short-staffed. But wouldn't it be alarming if somebody who had the seeming decency and the honour and the truth to flag it up to management at that time, then reframes it and says, well, and if they made it explicit, and if it was made explicit for everybody to hear and see at Thirlwall and in the trial, which it wasn't, obviously, the contents of that email, and then the defence should have made a hell of a lot out of it, and Thirlwall should be making a hell of a lot out of it, but they're skirting over it. But it's changed into something that ZA, if ZA had written something else, I'm not saying she did, if she had written something else, she can now say, oh no, well, it's not just about short-staffedness, but that's the cover that the murderer uses. That's the cover that the murderer uses to get away with the crimes, as opposed to actually what I did say, or what someone else may have said in an email at the same time that my email was sent. At the same time my email was sent, someone else sent an email in which they actually said a hell of a lot more. Anyway, don't ask me about it. That's ZA speaking, Dr. C speaking, but not speaking really, not, and deliberately Thirlwall and the court avoiding the contents, including the defence apparently, seemingly. But it did mean, this is ZA. It did mean partly that Lucy could hide what she was doing within people being generally busy. Hypothetically now, I'm not saying they're the same person who sent this information to Chambers, but as generally busy, compare this. We're being generally busy, and a murderer can hide the murders because we're generally busy. What an anodyne statement. What a very milquetoast flatline statement. Generally busy. Compare that to another kind of statement that someone else sent. Wonder who that was. Children are going to die. Generally busy, children are going to die. Generally busy, children are going to die. It's unsafe. Generally busy, it's an unsafe unit. Nobody's listening to us. Generally busy, ZA at Thirlwall. This other email, nobody's listening to us. It's an unsafe unit. Children are going to die. People are going to have breakdowns. And there's a very interesting aspect about the breakdown idea coming up in a minute that my friend has supplied in this information she sent to me today in an email. A different friend from the correspondent from the day before. And I thank them both and everyone else and Jabe for saying, and all the commenters, and Jabe for clarifying that Dr. Zade is Dr. C. I've got to be careful what and look, and this is the brilliant selection. Anyway, I'll finish that bit off. It did mean that Lucy could hide, this is Dr. Zade at Thirlwall, could hide what she was doing within people being generally busy. Generally busy. Anyway, I've done that bit. I won't flog it. It also meant that there was less time for the non-urgent acute things like reviewing the deaths afterwards. Well, there were post-mortems. And reviewing other incidents because we were so busy just trying to cover the acute service. So busy. Generally busy, so busy, vis-a-vis, unsafe. Children are going to die. Staff are going to have breakdowns. Interesting how it all changed, isn't it? And how it's all been arranged to be a different thing now, in which it's reframed, in which it's actually just a general busyness, in which a serial killer can get away with things. Whereas before, it's actually stating in a general sense, the cause of what's going on there, the actual cause, and nothing to do with any deliberate harm or murders, obviously. And this is the really fascinating bit that my friend has picked up out here in the email she sent me today, which is amazing. And this is Dr. Zade now at Thirlwall. She says, the period, and remember the thing about that email where there was talk about staff having breakdowns if nobody listened to us. Remember that bit that somebody else might have wrote? The Honourable Doctor wrote. The Honourable Doctor wrote that. Staff are going to have breakdowns, right? Look at this bit here from Dr. Zade that my friend has picked out from Thirlwall. She says, the period where I was off between December 2015 and March 2016 was a very significant personal stress. Right. What else happened in December 2015? An honourable doctor sent an email to Chambers. An honourable doctor sent, so we thought, an honourable doctor sent an email to Chambers in December 15 talking about people having stress breakdowns because of the unsafety and that children were going to die. And here we have Dr. Zade C in the trial, Zade at Thirlwall, saying that she obviously had to go off sick for 4 months. Because of what? The significant personal stress. Yeah. Is there a connection? I don't know. We can consider that. We can consider that. So she wasn't there for that period of time. And do you know what happens in January 2016? There are three deaths. Oh, well, I can't even say that anymore because There are so many rabbit holes here. I was going to say there are 3 deaths, because I've always been saying that. 3 deaths in January 2016. But that's all changed now. Do you know why? Because the NHS, 5 years down the line in 2023, when the trial's ongoing, revised all the mortality statistics from their 2018 FOI, saying they're all wrong, and all wrong in different kinds of ways. And I've done videos about that, but wrong in different kinds of ways. And that, that leads back to David Davis's speech, and what information is he using there? Does he know anything different? So that's another can of worms. But nonetheless, you've got this Dr. ZA taking 4 months off with significant personal stress. Well, of course they're going to call it personal, because they're not going to want to relate it to the job situation, because they're going to have to say, well, what was going wrong in the job situation? Oh, well, I can't say it. You know what I want to say, don't you? You know what I want to say. But they can't say it. They've got to call it personal stress, like Dr. A's got personal stress. Anyway, oh Christ. So then my friend has done some selections from Dr. ZA at the trial, who, thanks to Jabe, we now know was, and obviously my friend has realised that Dr. ZA was at the trial, but is under the name, thanks to Jabe telling us that it's under the name of Dr. C. So C becomes ZA. You've got to wonder why those changes, haven't you? Why would they do that even? It's not as though they've got multiples of Dr. A's. Why couldn't they keep Dr. A as Dr. A? Why did he have to become you? Why wouldn't they want you to? Why wouldn't Thirlwall want you to relate? I know people could infer it very, very quickly, and they did. Dr. ZA has taken a bit longer, and obviously Jabe knows that Dr. ZA was C. And my friend here knows that Dr. ZA was at the trial, but and then we've got the whole picture now with that. And people know Dr. B at the trial becomes V. But why would Thirlwall go out of its way to make it harder for people to realise who the anonymous witnesses were in the trial and what they're called now? Why would you need to do that? Have they got about 50 A's they've got another A that they've used up, and so they've got to shift him to a U? It's all very weird. I mean, what are they playing at? So this is the selection about Dr. ZA. Sorry if I'm a bit... It's just insane. It's just evil. It's evil. The level of evil here and the cover-up. The bit that my friend has taken out here, sent to me here. It's selections from the trial. And this is what Jabe has said in a comment as well, but also my friend says here, it's with regard to a consultant paediatrician, this is in November 2022, so at the beginning of the trial, who cannot be identified for legal reasons, but was going under the letter C, Dr. C, turned from the witness box to child E's parents, sitting in the public gallery, and made her apology. The doctor was the on-call consultant when child E deteriorated rapidly on the evening of August the 3rd, 2015, and died in the early hours of the next day. Jurors heard that necrotizing enterocolitis, NEC, a serious gastrointestinal disorder, was entered as the cause of death in child E's death certificate. The doctor, this is C at the trial, ZA at Thirlwall, told the court, quote, "At the time I felt. This is a weird thing for a doctor to say, isn't it? Weird language, weird register. This is what she's saying in the court. I felt child E had NEC. I felt it. I was just a feeling, which had led to his collapse and deterioration. So I discussed that with the coroner, and we agreed, i.e. the coroner and her, for that to be put on the child E's cause of death. Just because I felt it, yeah. Or knew it, but I knew. But that's what it is. That's why I just got upset by that word "felt," because she knew it or she felt it. She felt it. she made a clinical determination about that, to the point that she discussed it with the coroner. But because of things changing, and you're having to change the story now, when all the years later, when she gives the evidence at the trial, it becomes "I felt," which is something else completely. Not that I made a clinical determination, that it ends up going on an official medical document on the cause of death in liaison with the coroner. No, it has to become something much softer and weaker, which is, "Oh, I only felt it," leaving all the room open to now change it into something else, i.e. reframe it as a murder. She said, Mrs. Dr. C at the trial, ZA at Thirlwall, she said the infant was a high-risk baby. So it's a high-risk baby that, I thought they were all unexpected and unexplained, and they're all stable. But anyway, the infant, this is child E, is a high-risk baby, and also took into account a colleague's observations of gastrointestinal bleeding and abdominal discoloration. But they're all stable, though. They're all stable. High risk. Prosecutor Simon Driver asked, "Are there any clinical factors that militated against that conclusion," i.e. neck, I think. The consultant replied, "I considered them fully at the time, but the fact that child E's observations were seeing how they're changing the script again, observations were very stable up to the point of collapse, does not normally fit with NEC." But at the time, you said to the coroner it was NEC, and that's what you wanted put down. And now it's changed that you can see the slipperiness of it, can't you? You can see it, and then she goes on, this is all backfilling and trying to make out as though, well, she's having to do a difficult job here, because she's having to say, well, I didn't spot that there was any deliberate harm, and I was wrong about what I said it was as well. So she's having to dance on the head of a pin here, Dr. C/ZA. And the abdominal x-ray not showing any signs of neck over an hour before he died. I don't think I gave enough weight at the time that the x-ray had been normal. Now, this all backfilling. It's all backfilling to cover her in a multitude of ways, or at least two ways. One, that she had got the right diagnosis, but now she has to change it. Yet now, because of the story of the faked up serial killer story, she's got to change it that was possible. And she's got to justify why she, at the same time, she's doing an impossible thing. She's got to justify, well, why didn't she spot the deliberate harm as well? Oh, God, it's a nightmare. She told the court, that's Dr. C/ZA, she did not now think NEC was the cause of death. Oh, no, well, you can't. It's not that she doesn't think that anymore. It's that she mustn't think it anymore, because it's a murder story now. And you mustn't think that. And she's been charged with it because Evans has said it was something else that none of the other consultants can see, that the pathologist couldn't see, that any of the other reviews by pathologists and I'm forgetting all the terms, forensic pathologists couldn't see. So she's got to go back now and say, oh, well, no, it wasn't that. I got it all wrong, and I felt it at the time, but you know how it is. You kind of feel it, but now I realise that feeling was wrong, because there's a new story in town, and I've got to change everything retrospectively. What I felt, actually, it wasn't what she felt at the time. It was a clinical assessment that she shared for very good reason with the coroner. But it's all got to change. This is how slippery, how shapeshifters. They're shapeshifters, all of them. I'll calm down. The doctor went on, this is ZA, quote, anyway, I can't say it. I keep wanting to say things I shouldn't. Quote, a post-mortem would take place if we didn't feel we had a cause of death. Yeah, but she did though, didn't it? But did she do that on a feeling then? Just on a feeling? The cause of death was just a feeling for her. Just a feeling. That was enough. It can be requested for any baby who dies if the parents want an investigation, but here's the thing that she did. Here's the thing that ZA did. The parents were And thanks to my friend for making all these selections, who sent me the email today. The parents were understandably devastated that Charlie had died and were not keen on a post-mortem, and I didn't want to make a terrible situation any worse, so I didn't push. Which is something I now regret. Well, she can't. She wouldn't have been in. Why would she have even thought of the potential to even push for it? Because she said what it was. And she's had to reframe it and say it was based on a feeling. No, it was based on her clinical assessment. And that's what gave her the rationale to say to those parents, well, there's no need to have a post-mortem because we have a cause of death and we can tell exactly what it is. It's NEC, necrotizing enterocolitis. That's what it is. But now she regrets the idea of it. Why? Because her clinical assessment was just based on a feeling. Then there's a cross-examination bit with Ben Myers, KC, defending, who says to this doctor, C at the trial, ZA at third wall, this is precisely the type of situation where a post-mortem would have been very helpful, isn't it? And then Dr. C, ZA, says, and I regret for not pushing for a post-mortem at the time. Pushing for one. Not pushing for one, that sounds as though somebody was pushing against her. Like, oh, they didn't want me to do what? They didn't want me to do one. I know the parents said they weren't keen for it, but it's like nobody official was pushing against it. It was her. It was her pushing against there being one, wasn't it? Really? In tandem with the coroner by making a decision about what the cause of death was and being satisfied with it. But surely not being satisfied with it just based on a feeling, but on a clinical assessment. Anyway, Myers then says, but at the time you were questioning Neck. Well, and at that time you didn't have an obvious explanation. No, they weren't questioning. No, they weren't questioning Neck. No, she actually says, she goes to the coroner and says that's the cause of death. We've got to put that down as the cause of death. Is that questioning it, or is that a bit more than questioning it? Anyway, the doctor replied, I completely agree with hindsight. Yeah, because they've got to agree with everything now, because everything's got to be very soft and malleable retrospectively in order to go along with the murder story. You've got to be able to show that your clinical assessments were worthless back then, or they're based on feelings, or they're very floaty, and they can be, yeah, and I regret it, and it was based on a feeling then, I shouldn't have done it. It's just a feeling I had, but I went to the coroner and said that's the cause of death there. But since the murder story, no, that all softens out into something that was just, yeah, I probably should have done that instead of just going by feeling. I should have. She turned to Child E's parents, that's Dr. ZA/C, and I apologised to them that I didn't push for that. Well, who's she talking about the pushing? Not with the coroner. The coroner wasn't telling her, oh, you mustn't push for it. Do you see that? Do you see the lies being told here? Do you see how the reframing is the lie? Okay, the parents weren't keen on it, but the idea that she's saying I didn't push for that suggests there was something official she didn't resist, i.e. the coroner or someone else. And she wasn't strong enough to resist it. But it was her herself saying that was the cause of death. Anyway, sickening. Myers suggested you, in effect, steered them away from thank you, Myers. Steered them away from a post-mortem. The witness says, I don't believe that was the case. What a disingenuous, what a liar. What an absolute liar. What a snake pit of liars these people are. Mustn't compare to animals. What a pit of liars these people are. Snakes don't lie. Snakes have never lied. Not to my knowledge. These people do. These consultants do. All the time, about everything. On Monday, Child E's mother told the jury that the doctor told them a post-mortem would not tell us very much. Yeah, because she'd made a clinical assessment. Yeah, and the post-mortem itself didn't find any deliberate harm. You just need an Evans to find that, who can do it in 10 minutes, don't you? Lucky they had an Evans to find out in 10 minutes what nobody else could find out in years since it happened, after multiple checks and different pathologists looking at it and the consultants themselves. 10 minutes based on some shabby notes. A couple of years down the line, in Evans's place in Carmarthen, he's been sent all these notes. He's got to print them all out. They're all over the shop. 10 minutes, bang. He knows it's something that no one else can see. Anyway, there we are. That's Evans for you. She then said her husband decided not to ask for one, largely because it was explained to them there was little point. Well, yeah. It's not so much that ZA didn't push for it, it's that what Myers says. Anyway, God. Another bit of information, or a really interesting roundup here from the pressgazette.co.uk, which my friend sent to me today in an email, which is very handy to read out, regarding anonymity. And the title is, "What reasons did hospital staff give in applications for anonymity?" And this is from the pressgazette.co.uk. The Telegraph reported, so it's a gazette from other different reportings. The Telegraph reported that one of the staff whose testimony was attributed in coverage to Dr. A had argued that he, so it's about Dr. A, quote, suffered from severe anxiety for 4 years and believed he would struggle to give clear and accurate answers in court if his true identity was revealed. Oh God, 4 years is an interesting... What might 4 years mean? Yeah, what's 4 years about? Do you know what 4 years, what the first thing springs into my mind about 4 years? It's the time between... It's around the time between the second arrest and Lucy Letby, and then between that second arrest and the arrest where Lucy ends up going to prison on remand. It's all the period of time when Lucy's in prison up to the trial. It's all that time, isn't it? That when he knows that he's not anxiety, it's shame. It's shame and fear and self-disgust. Maybe it's not even that. Maybe he doesn't even feel that. But it's all a ruse anyway, the anxiety. Interesting, though, that you choose 4 years. When does that go back? When did it start? What's the trigger? That you're part of something evil and you're going to play a part for the prosecution and turn on the person that thought you were their friend? You slimy little bastard. You slimy bastard, you, Dr. A. You're going to turn on your friend. And that's when Lucy cries, when she realises when she hears his voice. Every one of them. Et tu, Dr. A. Et tu, Dr. A. Yeah, look. Hold on a minute, look. Oh, please. Severe anxiety for 4 years. He'd struggled to give clear and accurate answers in court if his true identity was revealed. Do you remember the hypothetical thing I said yesterday in the email about a doctor? Just imagine a doctor that was maybe given anonymity, but actually goes on to a very much higher level in his career, and he's doing really sweetly, doing really well, much more responsibility, giving lectures all over the shop, giving lectures, to large audiences, but nonetheless crippled with anxiety and struggling to give accurate answers, can perform at a much higher level than he hypothetically. I'm not saying it's the same person, but I'm not saying who this other person is. But let's just say there was another person, similar, who'd gone up the ladder of the career pole, up the greasy pole, giving lectures to huge audiences, much higher level status job, but crippled with anxiety while he's doing it. Can't give accurate answers, struggling like a leaf shaking in the corner, unable to function properly. So he's got to be given anonymity. No, his anonymity is for other reasons. We know what it is. It's for the prosecution. It's for the story. In addition, this is even more feeble. His son and daughter were doing their GCSEs and A-levels, respectively, and had not been aware of his involvement in the case. What's that got to do with the price of fish? What's that got to do with anything? Look at all the other people involved. Haven't they got children? Haven't they got children? What's that got to do with it? If he's got nothing to worry about his involvement in the case, whatever that means, what is his children doing? And A-levels got to do anything? Well, GCSEs, that's talking from my background. We had O-levels in my day. Anyway, and groats. Anyway, but look, what's that got to do? And it goes on to say this brilliant selection that my friend has put together. One consultant who was granted anonymity, I wonder who that might be. Let's have a think. Said she had struggled with anxiety and depression again, and that she had lost her own child. I'm not saying anything about that. That's obviously terrible. At the Countess of Chester Hospital, according to the Telegraph. But again, what has that got to do with appearing in this case when you're one of the accusers? When you're one of the accusers and one of the people that signed the that consultant that and it's a female name there, and we know there are 2 female doctors signed the letter of apology for bullying. We know that, don't we? And anyway, and we know one was off with stress for 4 months between December 2015 and March 2016, and we know that another person, what we thought was an honourable doctor, sent an email about doctors breaking down to Chambers, sent this email and said doctors are breaking down. She sent that email in December 2015, and you got this other doctor going off for 4 months because of personal stress. It bears no relation that they should be anonymous because of that. Okay, look, the inquest findings were it finalised about baby, not baby Noah, about Ollie Stopforth. The final inquest findings were subsequent to the trial, I believe. So, reported in 2024. Okay. That being said, but it's all going on throughout the trial, and we know. I've got to be careful. Anyway, it's so difficult to talk about without bringing things together in too close a way. But throughout the trial, when Dr. Z.A. is giving evidence as Dr. C in the trial, there's also an inquest process going on in which what we thought was an honourable doctor is highly involved in that, in terms of missing the signs of sepsis for Ollie Stopforth, leading to his very sad death at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2020. But while the trial's going on for Lucy Letby, that inquest process is ongoing, either leading up to it or it's literally ongoing. And then you have the findings coming out in 2024. Just saying, in terms of reasons for very specific reasons for anonymity being given there. Another consultant told the court that this both of them in it, had a history of anxiety and depression. What about Lucy Letby's what about the PTSD they've caused her? They don't give a shit about that, do they? These people. And I'm talking even before she was arrested. Even before she was arrested, what they did to her. The anxiety and depression they caused Lucy Letby in those years, 2015, 2016, and getting her taken away from her career, and then getting her arrested. What about that? What about that bullying campaign? What about the anxiety and depression they caused Lucy Letby? And the terrible anxiety and upset they caused her family and her friends? What about that? But it's all about them, isn't it? So another consultant told the court that she also had a history of anxiety and depression, and that she had previously given evidence in a child homicide case. What's that got to do with it? Sorry, I'm not shouting it at you or whoever's listening. It's just, what's that got to do with it? And the process had been traumatizing. It's what they do. It's what doctors do in things like that, whether it's homicide. I mean, it's odd it's using her homicide, a murder case. But they do that kind of routinely in things to do with suicide. It's like the idea, what are these like people that just, these are people that are dealing with death all the time. These consultants, and illness and death. And they can't even go under their own name in a court. No, because it's all lies. It's all a fig leaf. It's all a set of lies and the most ridiculous excuses. The dog ate my homework. I'm not talking about somebody who's lost their own child, nothing to do with that, but it's got nothing to do with their reason to be anonymous in this situation, nor has giving evidence in a child murder case got anything to do with it either. It's all purely for the prosecution, the police, the CPS, the whole system to anonymise these people because they're compromised in one way or another. And we know now how compromised they are. They couldn't give Jairam or Breary. They couldn't give Jairam or Breary anonymity. They probably asked for it. They would have wanted it if they could have had it. And Gibbs, they would have all wanted it, but they knew they couldn't get away with that. But that's why these anonymous ones, these anonymous assassins, and sadly now it obviously includes someone who I had hitherto thought was possibly an honest broker there at that unit, but I don't think so. I don't think so now. And there's a little bit at the end that my friend's written from this, well, it's a copy from the Press Gazette article. A nurse given anonymity, so this is one nurse, a nurse given anonymity had argued it would be difficult to manage her mental, it's always the same, always the same, always the same. Doesn't matter about Lucy Letby's mental health, what they did to her, does it? A nurse given anonymity had argued it would be difficult to manage her mental health, my voice is going, during the trial. And a second said, I think there were three as far as I'm aware, at least three anonymous nurses. But here it says a second anonymous nurse said she had been suffering from a low mood. So you don't even have to say mental health anymore or anxiety, just to be a low mood. Just low mood since the inquiry started and could need to take time off work if she were named. So it's almost like, oh, well, if you do this to me, I'll but it's not about that. It's not about that. It's fear. I mean, in the cases of the nurses, I'm wondering whether it's kind of fear that they may get monstered by the consultants, or they may get monstered by the consultants, or the NHS as a whole, the trust as a whole, depending on what their input was. But the flip side of that is it might be that they are again very useful for the prosecution, and they'll just bend over backwards to give them anonymity because they're useful. And just for that reason alone, all it takes is a low mood and the potential that you might need to take time off in the future. Only the potential, mind, and only a low mood. So look at that. Look at it. Anyway, I know some people don't like long videos, but I'm just going to finish off the other two elements now. I'm going to move away from anonymity and talk about two other short elements. And I know if people don't like long videos, they don't have to watch them. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm going to finish this other bit off. Or people can watch things in bits. I watched a video, hour and 20 minutes. I just watch it in parts, But you don't have to watch them. Nobody has to watch anything. That's the thing, isn't it? When people say, why they say you could make them shorter, nobody has to watch anything. I'm not having a go at anybody. It's just that, you don't. There aren't people making very, very concise videos and much more prepared than I do, and perhaps that would be the thing to look at those then. But it's just not what I'm doing. I don't make any apology for it. Not that anybody's asking me to. I'm not having a go at anyone. It's just that, anyway, sod it. I shouldn't have started that. Moving on now to what I was saying about Pseudomonas aeruginosa and saying, Dr. Saladi was flagging it up. But as my correspondent from a couple of days ago mentioned, we've also got Dr. Elizabeth Newby. And if you look at the Telegraph article for the 3rd of October 2024, the headline of that is Lucy Letby inquiry, doctors suspected, quote, bug, unquote, well, I don't know why they're quoting it, because it obviously was there, it's proven, was causing deaths and collapses. I don't know why they had to quote that, but they suspected that. And you've also got this Dr. Elizabeth Newby, who is my new kind of hope for, one of them anyway, an honourable doctor. Dr. Saladi was one of the ones that had to sign the apology letter. So despite him saying some things to Thirlwall, which made him seem not totally as bad as some of the others, he was one of the ones that was named as obviously being part of this group that were bullying Lucy Letby, and he had to sign the apology letter. But Dr. Elizabeth Newby, I'm reading from this article in the Telegraph of the 3rd of October. Doctors suspected a bug, in quotes, was causing deaths and collapses on the ward where Lucy Letby worked, an inquiry heard. Well, this is the Thirlwall inquiry. Dr. Elizabeth Newby, who worked on the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital, and I remember reading this at the time when it came out, but just to reiterate it here, said she was worried that there may have been a bug on the ward. Well, they knew there was, though. They knew there was They knew there was. I'm sorry, Dr. Newby, but at least she's saying it. There may have been a bug on. They knew there was since May 2015. It was documented. But she's saying there may have been a bug on the ward or contaminated equipment causing the deaths and collapses of infants. I mean, really, it was the fact she knew there was a bug on the ward, and it's whether what she knew may have been causing the deaths, isn't it? Rather than there may have been a bug. They knew there was one. Doctors had noted a, quote, strange purpuric, is that how you say it? Purpuric rash on several babies who had collapsed and died in the unit in June 2015. Dr. Newby told the inquiry that the doctors had, quote, spent a lot of time discussing what could have caused the strange colour change in the infants. Oh, well, they didn't have Schule's paper, which was misused further down the line, did they? Didn't have that yet. So they could misuse that and get Evans to call it, first Jairam, then Evans to call it air embolism and make that shit up as well. At the time, they were actually allegedly trying to work out what it was in relation to a bug that they say may have been there, that they actually knew was there. Sorry if I'm going too fast. She said, I need a sedative. She said, I knew the trainees were very concerned about it. Yeah, well, everybody should have been concerned about it. Each baby had appeared to be infected, perhaps septic. Every baby appears to be infected. They all know it. And yet the hospital doesn't. I'm looking for a bad bug in the water. I was hoping for that. Evans saying to Sweeney, no, nobody knew about it as far as I was concerned. Nobody knew about Pseudomonas aeruginosa as far as I was concerned. Dr. Newby saying here, all the trainees are concerned about it. Every baby's infected and perhaps septic. We were concerned that we had a bug on the unit. Maybe contamination of some equipment. No, they knew the taps were contaminated since May 2015. And if they're contaminated and they put a filter on it, but it's not stopping it, and it's contaminated all through the period, they know that's going to spread the contamination to the equipment. And then you got the biofilm growing and all the other stuff happening underneath that as a result of it, which is then probably getting into the ventilators. She says here, one of the ventilators, for example. So we were extremely concerned about it, to the point that you did what? I'm not having to go at Dr. Newby. At least I am actually. I am, Dr. Newby. At least you had the honesty to say this. At least you had the honesty to say this and not say, oh, because of all that stuff going on, the murderer hid in plain sight because we're worried about a bug, and she was doing the murders under the cover of there being maybe a bug there, even though we knew there was one. Do you see what I mean? It's even Dr. Newby, it's all like we were extremely concerned about it. What question do you ask Newby then? Well, what did you do about it then? What did all the other consultants do about it? What did the hospital do about it? Nothing. Well, they put a filter on it, but it carried on. They keep testing the taps. It's still there. Evans said you should have closed the place down if it would have been his place. Why didn't the hospital tell the police, Evans, that they had Pseudomonas all through that period? Extremely concerned about it. Not closing the unit down. Anyway, so that's that bit of that. And then the other last little bit I'm going to do, get it under an hour. And this is in relation, again, to my friend who emailed me today with a second bit of, and I know people know about this to a certain degree, but it's a very succinct way it's been put, and it's a quote from Jayaram in relation to him finding Lucy Letby apparently catching virtually red-handed, doing nothing, right, by the monitor, not reacting. And that was that whole story he fabricated, and he can change the times, whatever he wants to. And in all likelihood, it wasn't even Lucy Letby in the room. So we got all that. But it's the issue around, and this is a sort of an element from Reddit anyway. But it's a quote from James Tomlinson's witness statement, which was published online on the 13th of January 2025. So Jane Tomlinson's witness statement, and it's in relation to a complaint made by baby A's parents in January 2016. Baby A's parents make a complaint in January 2016 about their baby's treatment, and that Jayaram responds to this complaint from baby A's parents, saying that he as part of his response to the complaint, he says he had to explain that sometimes you will not see nurses spring into action at an alarm. You will not see it. They may just start by looking at the monitor and the baby. That's his response to the complaint made by baby A's parents. And the quote here is this. I'm just making sure I understand the attribution of the quote. Well, I think this is from James Tomlinson's witness statement. You need to go back and look at that, published online 13th of Jan 2025. But it's a quoted aspect here, which I think is coming from Jayaram. I believe this is coming from Jayaram. It's in quotes. I'll read this out. But basically it's the policy, and it is what Jayaram is saying to the parents of baby A when they're complaining, why didn't nurses do anything when this alarm went? And here's the response. When monitors alarm, this is quoted, it is a signal, and I know other people know about this stuff, but still, it's very, very concise, this. It is a signal to the staff to look at them. They often alarm due to movement or poor contact. If an alarm goes off, a member of staff may look up at the monitor, and if it is clear it is a false reading or just a minor change, then no action is necessarily needed. No action is necessarily needed. You look at them, there's an area of pause. Usually the first move would be to check the baby the monitor was attached to. For example, an oxygen monitor may read low, but if a baby is pink or there is poor trace on the monitor, then no action would be needed. But if the baby is pink or there is a poor trace on the monitor, then no action is needed. So the quote there, and the response to baby A's parents to their complaint is that what you do is you have this watching, waiting period when alarm goes off in many instances. Maybe not all instances, but in many instances. And so somebody on Reddit is saying this, that, so it is, he's saying he wrote that on the 10th of February 2016. So that quote I just read about when monitors alarm, that's from Jayaram. That's what Jayaram says as a means of answering baby A's parents' complaint. Because they've obviously said, we saw something alarming there, and then they didn't spring into action immediately, or didn't do something immediately. Jayaram wrote that quote on the 10th of February 2016. And then as the person from Reddit, who's not attributed here in what my friend has sent me, but a person in Reddit says, but they make it doesn't, in that sense, it doesn't matter who on Reddit is, it's what it's saying, it's the point it's making. And then Jairam, quote unquote, caught Lucy Letby red-handed doing just that, what he'd said. Just what he'd said was the right thing to do. Exactly one week later, on the 17th of February. So he writes 7 days before, he says, yeah, nurses are going to watch and see what happens for a moment. And then on the 17th of February, him seeing what he says nurses should do and do, then becomes something that's etched in his nightmares forever, and equates to catching someone virtually red-handed doing exactly what he said you should do. And he said that to baby A's parents as part of a complaint that they make, and that's the response he gives to them. They can just have it any way they want it, can't they? And that's what happens when you're making up shit and you're making a murder out of nothing and you're having to make up so much stuff. Dr. Z.A. going back that her clinical opinion was just, oh God, it was a feeling. Making up as though somebody was pushing against her doing it. I should have pushed for it. Oh God, I should have done. Where it was actually her that was directing that, based on her clinical opinion of neck, in the case of baby E, wasn't it? Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there. I wanted to get it all into one video. I mean, and that's just it. It's sickening. It's a dark pit of lies, covering up for each other. There's much more to come. There's so many, and there's fault. People have been saying in the comments, are they going to start turning on each other? Yes, I think they will. Eventually, it will be an internecine war. Factions, and including Evans and the police. They'll all start turning on each other as they know it's breaking down under the weight. And what is yet to come from all the work that's being done by 50 or even 60 experts on Mark McDonald's team across the world. What is yet to be seen from that? What's going to come out that's going to make them want to turn against each other even more? The bombshell about Baby O in relation to Breary, what's that done for the gang of 7, although some of them are retired and some of them are elsewhere now? Some of them, well, no, I can't say that. I was going to say, but I was thinking about the doctor. There's a doctor crippled with anxiety who's anyway. I've said it all. They're all crippled with anxiety, but they're all continuing working at very high levels and in the NHS and as consultants and I don't know. It's, please, it's going to end. It's got to stop all this. It's all got to come out. Thank you for listening. Take care, and all the best. Bye-bye.